Right, and good afternoon. My name is Kristian, and I am a postdoc at the University of Sheffield. So I've been involved in several outreach events like Pint of Science, creating YouTube, because I work with endangered languages, creating resources for the community. But today I want to talk specifically about some of the two projects I've been most recently involved in. So I'm part of the group. We are finishing our workshop. If you didn't attend, bad for you. We are called Feast and Famine. So we study morphological overabundance and defectivity in language. And I'm going to talk about two ideas that we've been baking. One of them is a blog that I am following, and out of the materials from this blog, I also prepare some teaching materials. The idea is I am neurodivergent. I have problems with abstraction. So I was attending back in the day some teacher training courses, and we learned about Lego and Play-Doh for education. Could be super cool, very beneficial for even high school, university students having problems with attention deficit disorder, autism, Asperger, and so on. And so the idea came like, okay, we are doing hardcore morphology. This is like really dense. How can I make linguistics attractive and understandable for people? So I challenged the people in my project, let's try to explain our project using Lego bricks and illustrations with Lego. And about the same time, it came the opportunity to participate in an initiative to teach at schools in the UK. I've prepared some ideas that I want to show you. So the idea is, don't want to get into politics, but there's a huge class division in the UK. So people from working class families hardly ever make it to higher education. And especially since the pandemic, there was a huge gap. Usually the people that are more economically challenged as well, they are people from racialized backgrounds. So the idea is to bring scientists from the university into those high schools. You spend several weeks talking about your research and basically to train these kids to see that, at university, there are more options than just being a lawyer or a doctor. It's just because they have never had someone in their environment that taught them what linguistics was. It is an issue. Also, in the UK, our teaching of foreign languages is atrocious, like really, really bad. And we have this paradox. On the one hand, if you're poor, being bilingual is really bad. Like, it is very stigmatized, like, oh, these kids are speaking an African language. But if you are rich and you're sending your kids to learn French at school, even if they just say, bonjour, je m'appelle Michel, that's like super cool and fancy. And so then these kids, like the kids, they come to our linguistic classes and you say adverb, and they're like, what? Well, verb, they might still get what it is, but you can't, there's not much communication. So my idea was, let's go to these rough areas and work with these kids from the schools, many of whom have a migration background. Especially Sheffield, we have quite a few communities, so Polish, Pakistani, Nigerian, Ethiopian. And so trying to, instead of all their life at school and their system is telling them it's bad that you come from these bilingual, double background. So trying to take the best of that and engage them into our project. So I want to show you just a little demo of what I did. So my topic, the research topic is very specific. So I try to create like a 6-week, so like 6 lessons over like 6 weeks program where we're going to talk about morphology and curious things that can happen in languages and trying to extract like, what does it sound like in the language of your grandparents or your parents and so on. So let me show you very briefly. I like showing them always photos of the places where I do field work, and they were like, wow. And well, I'm a linguist. I go to different villages and I interview people. I try to record these dying languages. So Well, in this session, I want to teach you what is morphology, how languages are different from each other, and most importantly, what are paradigms, and what these paradigms are and how they can get out. So I like always asking, start of the class, how many languages do you speak? What languages can you name? And this is always very funny because, you know, especially with the white kids, they have very funny ideas about what languages can be, like, I don't know, things like American is like, that's not a language, darling. Yeah, and it's always nice to ask them how many languages do you think there are, because most of them they think, I mean, I know Spanish and my neighbors are Polish and I don't know, 10. And like we say, well, actually, we've got 7,105 living languages recorded. And wow. So I like starting to explain what is morphology. And I use Lego analogy. So let's say that languages are like little bricks. Most of the times, you know, we might be aware of the big blocks, like sentences or a paragraph or like big words. But actually, if you look deep inside, there are these smaller parts that together they make words, and then so on, they make sentences. So these words, sometimes these little blocks, they might look similar, or they might be the same, as in when I say in English, I am, you are, but sometimes they are different. Like, sorry, so I am, but you are. You can't say I am. And other times, they look the same. And these little blocks like grouping in together, and they form structures, which we call paradigms. In some languages, like in English, these structures are pretty boring, actually. But if you look into other languages in the world, like we have some Czechs in this class, or some Poles, they can get a bit more complex. And you know what? In some languages in the world, these structures get really crazy. So let's check your language skills. And then I like asking my kids, translate the sentence, the dog ate my homework. Like the most important phrase that they will learn at high school, like to save them from all problems. So then, well, I ask them in like their different background languages, and then I tell them, okay, so count, how many words do you count there? Are there more words than in English or less? So if you see in Polish, for example, we have less words. That means because Polish uses other smaller blocks to make these nouns. It means Polish morphology is more complex than English morphology. And then, well, I'll just finish up. I like talking about oddities. So, for example, the different tenses. So they might be aware about present, past, and future. But then you talk about, you know, in some Australian languages, they have a remote past. Or in some language in Papua, they have the hodiernal to talk about things later on the day. Or they might be aware of masculine, feminine from their French classes, but then I tell them, well, this is a language I work with in Dagestan, and they have 5 genders. And yeah, I like always finishing, like engaging them about thinking of their language at home. Is it more complex than English or less? Because all the time they've come with this narrative, you know, they probably speak some Urdu or Polish, but they don't know how to write very well. So they have this complex of inferiority, that the language is less good. So when you explain them that actually your language is very complex, this is a way of motivating them. Just to wrap up, I would like to invite you, if you want to, just to follow us on Twitter and on Facebook, and also you can have a look at our blog for more ideas of what we've been doing and are trying to do using Lego blocks. And thank you very much for your attention.